Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Thursday, February 26, 2026. And, if you've been glancing at the headlines this week, you might feel like you're suffering from a pretty severe case of economic whiplash.
Oh, yeah. Whiplash is definitely the word for it. It's completely split-screen reality right now.
Right.
I really don't know if I can recall a week where the signals were just this completely contradictory.
Seriously, because on one screen, you have Asian markets absolutely tearing the roof off. I mean, you've got the Nikkei in Japan hitting 58,000.
Incredible numbers.
Right. And the KOSPI in Korea just smashing right through 6,000. It is just absolute unadulterated AI mania over there.
Pure momentum.
Exactly. But then you look at the other screen, and you have Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan Chase.
Essentially the godfather of Wall Street at this point.
Right, essentially.
Thanks.
And he's out there basically standing on a table waving a massive red flag and screaming that we're all sleepwalking into another 2008.
Which creates this incredibly dizzying contradiction for, anyone trying to figure out where to put their money or just trying to understand the economy. You have record highs on one hand and these dire apocalyptic warnings happening in the exact same news cycle.
A bit wild.
And usually when you see that kind of massive divergence, when the vibes are this far apart, something is about to break.
So our mission for this deep dive is to look past just the stock tickers. We're calling this one Infrastructure and Excess.
I like that title.
Thanks. Because we want to look at the plumbing, the actual physical and legal plumbing of the economy, which is getting a massive frantic overhaul this week.
And we have a really fascinating stack of sources to get through to prove that exact point. We are looking at the fallout from President Trump's State of the Union address, specifically regarding AI's massive energy bill.
That's a huge one.
Right, and then a historic loan from the Department of Energy that effectively rewires the American South. We've also got a landmark defamation ruling that could fundamentally change how corporations fight back against regulators.
Oh, the Exxon story.
Your Exxon one. And then, honestly, one of the strangest insider trading cases I think I've ever seen.
This involves a YouTuber, right?
It involves a YouTuber, a governor, and a prediction market. It is a very, very 2026 kind of problem.
I cannot wait to unpack that one. But let's start with the heavy lifting. The literal power struggle happening right now. Because if there was one major headline from the State of the Union on Tuesday, it's that the internet has suddenly become very, very heavy.
That is the perfect way to frame it, because for the last decade or so, we've all kind of thought of the cloud or the tech sector as this weightless, ethereal thing, like it just lives in the air.
Right, just magic Wi-Fi.
Exactly. But AI is heavy. It is profoundly physical. It requires these massive data centers, intense cooling systems, and maybe most importantly, it is just incredibly thirsty for electricity.
So in the address, the president announced this ratepayer protection pledge, which, on the surface, sounds like your standard political naming convention.
Everything is a protection pledge these days.
Exactly. But when you actually dig into the mechanics of what they're proposing, it's a radical shift in how we think about utilities in this country.
It really is. The core mandate that the administration is pushing here is build, bring, or buy. They are looking directly at big tech, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, and telling them they cannot just plug their shiny new AI data centers into the existing public grid.
Because the grid can't handle it.
The grid is simply too old. It's already stretched incredibly thin. If these companies just plug in these massive gigawatt scale centers, the local demand spikes, and then your electricity bill at home goes absolutely through the roof.
Which is a political nightmare for literally any administration. You can't have families getting $800 electric bills just because a tech company wants to train a new language model down the street.
Precisely. So the argument they're making to Silicon Valley is you want to build the brain, fine, but you have to build the power plant to run it.
You have to bring your own power.
Essentially, yes. Bring your own generation to the table. And this isn't just, a gentle nudge or a suggestion. These tech leaders are literally scheduled to fly in and meet the president in early March to sign this pledge.
It's a protectionist move.
Right. It's designed to insulate the average consumer, the ratepayer, from what they're specifically calling AI's thirst for power.
But just think about the actual logistics of that for a second. We aren't talking about putting a few extra solar panels on the roof of a data center. We are talking about building entire power plants.
Industrial scale generation.
Right. If Amazon or Google starts building their own gas plants or buying up nuclear capacity exclusively for their own use, They really aren't just tech companies anymore.
No, they become utility providers. They essentially become energy barons. You're seeing the potential privatization of critical infrastructure right in front of us simply because the public option cannot move fast enough to keep up with the algorithms.
This connects perfectly to that concept we've touched on in previous deep dives, the shadow grid.
Right, the shadow grid. This is where private companies effectively decide to run their own parallel infrastructure. If the public grid is cheap and reliable, you don't need a shadow grid. You just plug in.
But if it's shaky or capped?
Exactly. If it's shaky, expensive, or capped by regulators, the biggest players just exit the system entirely and build their own.
However, and this is a really big variant, however, the public grid isn't just rolling over and accepting defeat here. While the tech giants are being told to go build their own toys, the existing grid just got a massive, massive injection of adrenaline.
This is the other side of the coin we saw this week. Huge news out of Southern Company.
Yes.
Southern Company, through its subsidiaries down there, Georgia Power and Alabama Power, they just secured a historic loan package.
$26.4 billion.
Yes.
I mean, we throw around the word billions a lot when we talk about these topics, but for a single utility loan, $26 billion. That is staggering.
It's completely unprecedented. This money is coming from the DOE's Office of Energy Dominance Financing. And they aren't just patching up old substations with this cash. The plan is to build over 1,300 miles of new transmission lines and install thousands of megawatts of battery storage across both Georgia and Alabama.
The battery storage part is really the crucial element there, right? Because we constantly talk about solar and wind, but without massive storage, they're kind of useless when the weather doesn't cooperate.
Battery storage is the holy grail for renewable energy. It smooths out the entire supply curve. You save the midday sun for the midnight demand. But if you zoom out for a second and look at the broader strategy happening this week, it's fascinating.
It's a two-pronged approach.
Exactly. You have the government on one hand telling big tech, hey, get off the public grid and build your own stuff, while simultaneously they're pouring $26 billion into the public utilities to beef them up anyway.
You're just terrified of the lights going out.
They absolutely are. It's a stark acknowledgement that energy reliability isn't just an infrastructure issue anymore. It is a core national security issue. If the grid fails, the AI race stalls, and the broader economy crashes. So we are physically rebuilding the grid to handle the future, just throwing money at it from every conceivable angle.
So while the engineers are out there literally stringing 1,300 miles of heavy cable across the South, the pankers are sitting in their glass high-rises having a bit of an existential crisis.
They really are.
Let's pivot to those financial vibes.
Sure.
Because Jamie Dimon, he's usually the adult in the room. He's usually the guy telling everyone to just calm down. The fundamentals are fine. But this week, he sounds rattled.
He really does. Dimon explicitly came out and compared the current AI euphoria to the pre-crash years. He specifically cited 2005, 2006, and 2007.
Oof. Man, if you work anywhere near finance, hearing those specific dates is like hearing the theme music from Jaws. You just instinctively reach for your life jacket.
It's ominous. His specific concern right now is that he sees banks and investors doing dumb things again. That was his phrase. He's looking at the explosion of private credit, he's looking at the leverage in the system, and he's seeing this really dangerous mindset taking over this idea that a rising tide lifts all boats.
That is the classic bubble mentality. It's the whole, it doesn't matter what I pay for this asset today, because AI is going to fundamentally change human history, so the line will just go up forever.
That's exactly the trap. When everyone is making money easily, nobody checks the risk models. Dimon is saying that people are just getting way too comfortable with sky-high asset prices, assuming that the AI revolution justifies literally any valuation.
Right.
And he's seeing leverage creep back into the financial system in places where traditional regulators really aren't looking closely, like private credit, which has just exploded in size since the 2008 crash.
But then you look over at Asia, and they clearly left Jamie Dimon on read. They did not get the memo at all.
Not even close.
The Nikkei at 58,000, the KOSPI hitting 6,000. That is just pure momentum trading over there.
It's an absolute feeding frenzy, and it is driven almost entirely by the tech supply chain, the chip makers, the component manufacturers. So you have this incredibly stark split-screen moment we talked about at the top. Western bankers are bracing for impact and tightening their belts, while Asian markets are throwing a party like it's 1999.
Speaking of bracing for impact versus throwing a party, let's talk about New York City for a minute, because despite all of Dimon's gloom and doom about the financial sector, American Express just made a massive bet on the physical world. And I mean massive.
This was a huge vote of confidence for the return to office movement, or at the very least, the prestige of having a physical office. Amex announced they are building a brand new global headquarters at 2 World Trade Center.
And just to be clear for everyone, they aren't just renting 5 floors and slapping a logo in the lobby.
No, no. They are going to be the sole occupant of this building. It is a 2 million square foot tower. Construction starts this spring, and they plan to move in by 2031. This project alone is estimated to pump nearly $6 billion into the New York City economy.
So what does this actually tell us? I mean, in an era where we can do all our banking from our phones and we can take our Zoom meetings from the couch, Amex is planting a very large, very expensive flag right in Lower Manhattan.
It signals that they firmly believe the whole office is dead narrative is just wrong, or at least it's wrong for a company of their stature. They are banking on the long-term value of in-person collaboration, sure, but also the sheer prestige of a physical fortress.
It's a flex.
It's completely a status symbol. They are literally building a skyscraper to prove to the market that they are permanent. They are here to stay.
It's a fascinating contrast, though. You have Amex building a luxury tower for their employees, while other parts of the economy, specifically travel and leisure, are really hitting a wall. We need to do a quick check-in on Spirit Airlines.
Right. The whole infrastructure of excess theme definitely has a flip side. Spirit finally reached an agreement with their creditors for Chapter 11 bankruptcy.
So the Yellow Planes are officially restructuring.
They are. The plan cuts their debt down from about $7.4 billion to just $2.1 billion. But honestly, the financial engineering isn't the most interesting part of this story. It's the strategy shift.
Yeah.
Spirit has always been famous or infamous, depending on who you ask, for that absolute bare bones model. You pay for your water, you pay if you need them to print a boarding pass.
Right, if you wanted a seat cushion, that was an extra fee.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they are totally moving away from that now. They are actually talking about offering premium choices. They are cutting back on off-peak flying. It really seems like the race to the bottom on ticket prices actually has a floor, and Spirit just hit it face first.
It really feels like the economy is bifurcating right now. You have Amex building luxury towers for high-end finance, and Spirit realizing that everyday people actually still want a decent experience when they fly. That middle ground, the cheap but functional tier, feels like it's disappearing. You either have to be premium or you just go bust.
That is a great observation. It's the classic K-shaped recovery playing out in real-time corporate strategy. Companies targeting the high-end, like Amex or the luxury goods sector, are absolutely thriving. But companies that tried to win solely on being the absolute cheapest option are finding that consumers are either totally tapped out or they're just fed up with the nickel and diming.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. We talked about traditional financial crimes and risks with Jamie Dimon earlier, but I want to get to the weirdest story in our stack today.
Oh, this one is great.
We're heading straight to the wild frontier of law and regulation, and this involves, of all people, MrBeast.
This story completely blurs the lines between online entertainment and high finance. It centers around a platform called KOSPI.
Right, so KOSPI is a prediction market. It's fully legal in the U.S. now. You can go on there and bet on election outcomes. You can bet on the weather, whether the Fed is going to cut rates next month.
And apparently you can bet on the outcomes of YouTube videos.
Naturally.
KOSPI recently had to fine and suspend a specific user named Artem Kaptur.
And who exactly is Artem Kaptur?
He was an editor for MrBeast.
The biggest YouTuber on the entire planet.
Right. So Kaptur was placing bets on KOSPI regarding the specific outcomes of various MrBeast challenge videos. But because he was the guy literally editing the footage, he obviously knew who won the challenges days or weeks before the videos were actually released to the public.
That's literally insider trading.
It is exactly insider trading.
But instead of some guy in a suit stealing quarterly earnings reports from a locked briefcase, he's what? He knows who won a massive game of hide and seek.
That is precisely what it is. KOSPI flagged his account because he had near-perfect trading success, which is always the biggest red flag for any exchange. So they fined him $15,000. But if you think about the broader implication here, it's wild. Financial markets now encompass literally everything.
Yeah.
If you can place a bet on it, someone can commit fraud on it.
It's so weird. We used to worry about executives exchanging secrets in back alleys about corporate mergers. Now the SEC or these platforms have to worry about a 22-year-old video editor betting on content outcomes. It really democratizes financial crime in a very strange way.
And it isn't just YouTubers getting caught up in this. We saw a very similar case recently with a politician. A candidate for governor, Kyle Langford, actually placed bets on his own candidacy on that same platform.
Betting on yourself. I mean, it seems confident, but is that actually illegal?
Well, it's strictly against Kalshi's rules, for sure. He got banned for 5 years. But it really highlights a major problem. As these prediction markets grow into multi-billion-dollar platforms, the very definition of insider information is exploding. Is a politician betting on his own campaign insider trading? Is an editor betting on a video insider trading? Our financial laws were not written for a world where you can short sell a YouTube video.
Speaking of laws definitely not being written for the modern era, let's talk about free speech and defamation. Because there was a really major ruling down in Texas involving ExxonMobil and the California Attorney General Rob Bonta.
This is a sleeper story that could have massive, massive consequences for how big businesses interact with government regulators. So Exxon is currently suing Rob Bonta for defamation.
Okay, so the stage for us. What did Bonta say?
Bonta had publicly claimed that the concept of advanced recycling is a total lie. He slammed Exxon, stating publicly that less than 5% of plastic is actually recycled.
Okay, but normally government officials have what's called official immunity for things they say in the course of their job, right? Like if an attorney general comes out and says, this company is doing bad things, the company can't usually just sue him personally for defamation. That's literally the job of an AG.
Typically, yes, you're exactly right. That is the legal shield they operate under so they can vigorously do their jobs without the constant fear of being personally sued into bankruptcy. But Judge Trunkel, a federal judge in Texas, just ruled that Exxon's lawsuit can proceed. He completely stripped Bonta of that official immunity.
That is a huge precedent. How did that happen? What was the catch?
It all came down to a single donate button.
Wait, really? Explain that.
So Bonta sent out an email blast to his mailing list, slamming Exxon, calling them liars, doing the whole tough-on corporate crime routine regarding those recycling statistics. But at the bottom of that exact same email, there was a link soliciting contributions to his political campaign.
He crossed the streams.
Crossed the streams. The judge ruled that by soliciting campaign donations in the exact same communication where he was attacking the company, Bonta transformed an official government statement into campaign promotion. And political campaigning is not within the official scope of his employment as the Attorney General.
Therefore, no immunity shield.
Exactly. No immunity.
Wow. So just because he tried to fundraise off the public outrage, he opened himself up personally to a massive defamation suit from one of the biggest companies on Earth.
It's a massive, unforced error on his part. But beyond just this one case, it serves as a huge warning shot to every single regulator and politician in the country. If you mix your enforcement rhetoric with your political fundraising, you might instantly lose your legal protections.
That is such a fascinating technicality. And it shows that corporations like Exxon are becoming incredibly aggressive. They aren't just paying the fines and keeping their heads down anymore. They are actively fighting back against the political rhetoric.
It's lawfare, but in reverse. Corporations are using the courts to silence aggressive regulators, or at the very least make them think twice before they send out a press release. They are actively hunting for these exact kinds of slip-ups to strip away those legal protections.
All right, let's bring it down to the everyday level and move to our consumer corner. We've got a winner, a loser, and a government crackdown to cover. First up, the winner. In this weird economy where Jamie Dimon is terrified of a crash, who is actually making money hand over fist right now?
CAVA. The Mediterranean fast casual restaurant chain.
I feel like I honestly see a new CAVA opening on a different corner every single week.
And the financial numbers completely back up that feeling. Their revenue just surpassed $1 billion for the very first time, and their same restaurant sales are up 4%.
Which is crazy right now.
It is, because we are in a time where we're seeing a broader restaurant slowdown across the board. Starbucks has been struggling with foot traffic, McDonald's has been struggling with pushback on pricing, but TAVA is just defying gravity.
It totally fits that K-shaped recovery idea we mentioned earlier with Spirit Airlines. People are actively cutting back on the cheap lower tier stuff because the value just isn't there anymore. But they are still perfectly willing to drop $15 for a perceived healthy bowl of grains and hummus.
That's the key. Their entire pitch is heart, health, and humanity. And consumers, even the ones who are incredibly weary of inflation, are validating that specific model. They will absolutely still spend money for perceived quality or health benefits, even while they are ruthlessly cutting back on other dining out.
But speaking of food safety and health, You definitely need to be careful what you put in your smoothie this week. We have a very serious recall in the stack.
Yes, we do. This is a class I recall, which, for those who don't know, is the FDA's absolute highest threat level. It means there is a reasonable probability that eating this product will cause serious health consequences or even death.
Yikes. Okay, what is the product?
It's frozen blueberries. The Oregon Potato Company is currently recalling 56,000 pounds of frozen blueberries due to potential listeria contamination.
56,000 pounds. That is a lot of smoothies.
It is. Now, the really important context to understand here is that these likely were not sold in those little bags in the frozen aisle at your local grocery store. These were shipped to food service and industrial clients.
Which, honestly, is almost scarier, right? Because if they went out to industrial clients, they could end up being hidden ingredients in 100 different things. Muffins, prepackaged yogurts, school cafeteria lunches. You wouldn't even know you were eating the recalled product.
That is exactly the risk they are trying to contain. It really highlights the sheer vulnerability of the modern supply chain. One single bad batch at the industrial processing level spreads like absolute wildfire before anyone catches it. It's just another reminder of our broader infrastructure theme today. Our food system is every bit as complex and fragile as the electrical power grid.
And finally, sticking with that government infrastructure theme from earlier, there's a major crackdown coming regarding financial fraud.
Right. Going back to the State of the Union address, President Trump formally announced a war on fraud, and he has tapped Vice President J.D. Vance to lead the initiative.
So what's the actual mechanism for this? Are they just forming another task force to write a report? Or does it have teeth?
The administration stated it's going to be quite aggressive. They are actively looking to freeze federal payments to geographic areas or specific sectors where there is high suspected fraud. The president specifically mentioned freezing Medicaid payments to the state of Minnesota, and he cited recent scandals involving the Somali community there as the justification.
Okay, that is going to be an incredibly controversial move. Because freezing Medicaid payments at a state level affects a massive number of people who rely on that care completely, regardless of whether they have anything to do with the fraud investigation.
It certainly is a highly debated tactic, and experts are already out there pointing out that recouping fraud, while obviously a good goal in itself, is not going to magically balance the federal budget. The sheer math of the deficit just doesn't add up that way.
We are just impartially reporting what the source material lays out, but it's clear this is going to be a major flashpoint.
Absolutely. The administration is clearly making this a top priority enforcement action. It really ties back into our theme today of tightening the plumbing. They are trying to aggressively seal up the perceived leaks in government spending, even if the methods they are using are quite blunt and politically charged.
So let's try to bring this all together. We started with this idea of a tale of two realities, and I think we've seen that dynamic play out in literally every single story today. It really feels like we are living through a moment of extreme transition. We have tech giants being told to stop acting like apps and start acting like utility companies and build their own power plants.
Right.
We have YouTube editors inventing brand new forms of insider trading. We have state attorney generals losing their legal immunity just because they couldn't resist putting a donate button at the bottom of an email.
It really feels like all the old rules are just breaking under the pressure of these new realities. The old electrical grid literally cannot handle AI, so we are being forced to build a new one. The old financial laws didn't account for internet prediction markets, so regulators are scrambling to enforce new boundaries. The old narrative said the office was dead forever, and yet Amex is pouring billions into a new skyscraper.
We are just deep in the messy middle right now. The infrastructure of the country, both the physical concrete and wire, and the legal framework is being retrofitted in real time.
And that leads to a really big question for me, honestly, one that connects all the way back to that very first story about the data centers and the power plants.
What's the question?
If big tech companies actually do what the president is demanding, if they go out and build their own power plants, string their own transmission lines, maybe even build their own private nuclear reactors,
Yeah.
at what point do they fundamentally stop being just tech companies?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because if you control the world's information flow and you control the world's electricity generation,
You start looking a lot less like a traditional corporation and a lot more like a sovereign state. If they completely own their own power supply, independent of the public, what happens when they get to decide who gets to plug in? We are so used to the power company just being a boring, heavily regulated public utility. What happens to society when the power company is also the algorithm?
well, that is definitely a thought that will keep me up at night. The cyberpunk future really is arriving a lot faster than any of us thought.
Just stay curious out there.
And keep a very close eye on your electric bill. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us. We'll see you next time.